this morning after a very long day yesterday for many of us, a full good day, I think. But the room is just sort of slowly filling up. We're going to be starting in just a few minutes, but let me take this opportunity now to give you a few logistic points. The field trips, there's still a few spots left for the field trips tomorrow, so please register for those if you're interested up at the registration desk. And to let you know that there will be this World Skills competition training ongoing in the lobby all day long. So please check that out. I think that's a really fun kind of thing. And it would be nice for the young people who are doing that to be supported by some observers. So without any further ado, I'd like to call Carlos Diaz up on stage to moderate. Here he is. This first morning session, Enabling WOPs, Enabling Finance. Carlos.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. I am Carlos Diaz. I am a consultant now. I am living here in Düsseldorf, so I am based in Düsseldorf, very close to Bonn, only 1 hour from here. Thank you for your time, for your attention. I will be moderating this session on enabling WOPs and enabling finance. And for that, we have an excellent panel that I will introduce shortly, but maybe if you recall in the previous Congress in 2021 that at the end was fully virtual because of the remnants of the COVID, we also had a session on WOP funding, so who is actually paying for the WOP activities, and investment linkages, because of course there are still these ideas how to better integrate WOPs activities with financial investments as a way to either to access more WOP funding, because we all would like to see more WOPs happening, and or as a way to enhance or to guarantee the impact of the WOP activities, right? As more or less the ideas behind the Waterworks concept. I have to tell you that I also coordinated and moderated that online session. So I am going to present the panelists shortly, but first I would like to simply summarize what was discussed in the previous concept as a way to give some context to this session. If you remember, this is the, okay. Yeah, if you remember in the previous, the topics that we discussed in the previous Congress were about these two topics, right? WOP funding, no? So who is actually supporting financially the WOP activities, and the linkages with investments. And we reviewed the GWOPA WOP database, that is the most comprehensive data set on WOPs that we have, no? But if you are familiar with the database, you know that the information is quite limited, especially the information related to the financial aspects of the WOP activities. You can see that the information is getting better every time. GWOPA is doing a lot to improve the database, but of course, we are lacking information mainly on the financial aspects. And by looking at the database and also, of course, zooming in and checking some case studies, you can quickly identify that mentors and mentee, of course, they have been supporting these activities with in-kind contributions that whenever you monetize that, they are quite substantial. But of course, you also see in the database many mentors that have been supporting WOP activities directly, especially if you look at the past, our colleagues from the Netherlands, the Dutch water companies, because of the legislative support that they have in the countries. Actually, this solidarity mechanism, this regulation that they have, allowing them to expend 1% of their revenues on this kind of collaboration activities is what enabled them to directly support WOPs. And if you also remember the conversations held during the Congress, the previous Congress, many people actually appreciate this modality because, of course, this is what gave you the flexibility as a mentor to actually really keep the WOP principles, right? The not-for-profit, bottom-up approach, led by the mentee, etc. So that is about mentors and mentee, but of course, next to these WOP partners, right, we also identified several other institutions, right, supporting WOP activities in different kind of formats, and of course, you can group them in different ways, by the kind of donor of institution, is a bilateral organization, multilateral, but so we identified, and of course, if you are familiar with the WOP practice, you quickly identified the renowned programs that have been supporting the WOP activities, like the OFIT, the programs in the Inter-American Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, the EU WOP program that is currently financing 22 long-term activities. And you can group them in different ways. And of course, you can also try to identify what is the instrument they are using to be able to support these WOPs financially. Then we also have a very interesting discussion about where WOPs have the highest, the largest added value in terms of investment financing, right? If in the project preparation or during the implementation or post-implementation, I will say, also based on the interviews that we had, everyone recognized that WOPs has been, there are, you can see some case studies when you can see that they have been critical in the project preparation, pipeline development, identifying, working together with the mentees, identifying the investments, the more urgent investment they need, and even the sequencing is quite important for financiers, right? To know where to invest and what will be the best sequencing. And everyone, I am pretty sure that everyone will agree with me that maybe the largest added value of the WOPs are on the sustainability of the investments, right? So post-investments, after the investments have been done, to have a WOP there supporting and helping the mentees to actually to maintain this infrastructure running, because that is the goal of the investment, right? To actually to provide the services, not only to have a new infrastructure. That is where everyone feels is the greatest added value of a WOP, but of course it's still to be proved or assessed further. Then also about how to better linkage WOPs activities with investments. Sorry, that was about the project preparation or in the implementation or post-implementation. And of course, we also discussed about possibilities to better link investment with WOP activities, and we were discussing about possibilities to, for instance, to use WOPs as an alternative to some TA that is provided by some consultancy firms. But of course, quickly we realized that maybe that somehow contradicts some of the WOP principles, right? About flexibility, about equal relationship between partners, right? So that was a quite interesting discussion. And last but not least, we also discussed about how WOPs can support enhance the creditworthiness of the utilities. And actually yesterday, everyone here that attended the triple UCI presentation, right? You see what are the ideas behind that, right? Supporting utilities to enable them to access some commercial finance, right? And of course, everyone will have some idea about that. But those were the topics discussed in the previous Congress. So now we are going to start with this session on WOPs, enabling WOPs, enabling finance. And for that, as I told you, we have an excellent panel that I will start introducing to you. We have Mrs. Sorry. Yes, we have Mrs. This is okay. Here it is. So, okay. We have Mrs. Alison Woodruff, that she's connected virtually. She is a principal water security specialist with the Asian Development Bank, right? Mrs. Woodruff manages the ADB's Water Operator Partnerships programs, and she has 15 years of experience in urban development and water sector experience in the Asia and the Pacific. So thank you very much. I think, yes, she's connected now. We also have Mr. Arnaud de Vansay. He studied agronomy and forestry and worked on the conservation of Mayotte Island natural resources. He later moved to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD, working with the scientific community on policy research. He has also worked in an NGO and in Europe Aid on energy and nutrition issues. And in 2015, he joined the EU delegation to Rwanda as head of the section Rural Development. And later in 2020, he joined the Directorate General for International Partnerships of the European Commission as team leader on water, covering global policies and programs. Mr. De Vansay is also a member of the Investment Committee of Climate Investors II, 850 million fund to invest in the private sector on sustainable water management in developing countries. So thank you for being here in person. We also have Mr. Dieter Rothenberger from GIZ, right? He has more than 25 years of work experience in the water sector, mostly dealing with performance improvement and regulation of water utilities in Germany and Switzerland, and various partner countries in Southern and Eastern Africa, the Middle East, and the Caribbean. Mr. Rothenberger currently leads the sector program Water Policy Innovations for Resilience, which provides policy advice to the German Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, BMZ. And he's also responsible for developing and testing conceptual innovation, among them the triple UCI, the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative, developed in cooperation with the German partners KfW, BMZ, and the Dutch partners DGIS and FEI Waterworks. We also have here in person Mrs. Barbara Schreiner, sorry, that is the Executive Director of the Water Integrity Network, that is a global network of organizations committed to improving integrity practices and reducing the risk of corruption, right? That is, of course, as you know, is an issue in our countries. In the water and sanitation, specifically in the water and sanitation sectors, she has extensive experience in the water sector, in government, in research, and in the not-for-profit sector. Thank you for being here. And last but not least, we have also with us online Dr. Valit Mehalaine. He is the head of Grants and Technical Assistance Unit of the OPEC Fund for International Development, OFIC, with 25 years of experience working in international development cooperation. Before moving to his current position, Mr. Mehalaine worked for over 8 years at the African Region Division of the OPEC Fund, Public Sector Operations Department, so they are in charge of public sector lending, covering a large array of sector projects in various African countries. And prior to that, prior to joining the OPEC Fund, Dr. Mehalaine worked for 5 years as policy advisor at the United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and from 1999 to 2002 held various positions in the areas of trade, finance, and public sector lending and the Islamic Development Bank. He has a doctorate in economics with a specialization in development and trade issues from the University of Grenoble in France. So thank you very much for being here with us, and I will start actually addressing a couple of questions related to the topic. So I would like to start with Mrs. Alison Woodruff from ADB. Please join us on the. Super, thank you. So I will start with our two panelists that are joining us online, to secure that, that they don't disconnect. So I will start with Mrs. Woodruff from ADB, right? You know, we all know about these ADB WOP programs. We all know about this program that is supporting, I believe, up to 85 WOPs activities in the region. So, Mrs. Allison, I will address. Actually, I have the same questions for all the panel, and later we also have a different set of questions. But the main two questions to be addressed by the panel are: how can capacity development and WOPs in particular supports utilities financial management, sustainability, financial sustainability, and investment capacity? That is one. And the other one related to the linkages with the investment. Should WOPs be more systematically linked to investment? How? And what needs to be considered? What will be the pros and cons? So please, Mrs. Allison, the floor is yours. Hello?
Sorry, I was having computer problems, but I think they've been resolved now. Thank you so
Super.
much. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to join this session in this year's Congress. Thank you very much for briefly introducing the Asian Development Bank's WOPs program. We have been running it since 2006. And we've supported around 85 water operators partnerships in Asia and the Pacific. And great question about how WOPs can really build capacity and contribute to improve financial management and sustainability. I think from our side, we've really seen three channels where we have seen WOPs really make a difference in this area. The first is on where the WOP is actually directly contributing to support on building capacity in areas related to improved financial management. So, for example, ADB supported a WOP between the Colombo Municipal Council in Sri Lanka and City West Water, an Australian utility. And one of the key focus areas of their WOP was around improved business planning and account management. So that was really useful in terms of strengthening the capacity of the utility to put in improved financial management practices. So that was a direct target at the capacity building. The second channel, which I think is probably more common for us under the WOPs, is our WOPs focus on improving operational efficiency of utilities. So for example, many of our WOPs have concentrated on non-revenue water, on energy efficiency, on improved asset management practices. And through these channels, they all contribute to improved financial sustainability of the utility. For example, we supported a WOP in Fiji between the Water Authority of Fiji and Hunter Water. And NRW was one of their key focus areas. And Hunter Water, as the mentor, helped to establish a non-revenue water unit in the Water Authority of Fiji to tackle losses and improve intermittent water supply. And because of the capacity through the WOP, WAF actually, the Water Authority of Fiji actually had improved income of $2,000 to $6,000 every quarter from water sales, and they also significantly reduced expenditure around the order of like $900,000 on avoided costs through carding because water supply reliability was improved. And so that was a financial gain to the utility. Similarly, Hunter Water helped them do energy audits and introduced energy savings measures. And I believe they saved around 1.3 million in less than 3 years. So that's a direct, as a result of these operational efficiency measures, we saw improved savings, improved income, which ultimately contributes to financial sustainability. And then a third, and also we've supported WOPs around metering, for example. So we know unless connections are metered, it makes it very difficult for utilities to collect revenues and improve that financial sustainability. So we've also supported, we had a WOP in Kulnawasa in Bangladesh with Melinad, Philippines, one of the leading Philippines private sector utilities here. And they helped with quite many years ago with the rollout of a metering program, which again, they supported about 50% of the area being serviced by meters. And so that also helped with improved revenues from the Menti side. And then the third main channel, one of maybe slightly unique, ADB has been supporting regulatory WOPs. So we support regulators actually through using the peer-to-peer twinning model, and that has been really useful. A few years ago, we supported MWSS in the Philippines, which is the regulator for the 2 private concessionaires in Metro Manila. And we were able to, and through that twin, they focused on price rebalancing. So that they were able to convert the exercise. Basically, in the past, the concessionaires really led the price reviews, but through the WOP, it helped to build capacity of the regulator to lead these price reviews. And through these price reviews, obviously, they're necessary for utilities to maintain their financial sustainability as cost inputs increase and inflation and so on. So I think through these 3 channels, WOPs can really make a difference in terms of improving financial management and sustainability in Menti utilities. So I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much. Perhaps our colleague from OFIT, Dr. Walid, would like to also to complement. As you know, OFIT has also been supporting WOPs, especially particularly in Africa and in Asia, and also related to performance improvement plans. So, Dr. Walid, the same question for you, how WOPs in particular can support utilities, financial management, sustainability, and investment capacity, and also if you would like to elaborate a bit on the if, no? It will be interesting to better integrate the link between WOPs and investments, and how, and what will be the pros and cons.
Good morning, buenos dias. Thank you for the invitation. I wish I was there with you in person, but it's a great opportunity to also contribute virtually. I think, as you said, we have a cooperation now with WOPA which dates back to 2013, which started indeed with initial focus on African countries. Just to give you some background information, and then before I move, at the OPEC fund, to date we have approved loans, mainly loans for to support infrastructure investment projects in the water and sanitation project sector of close to $1.7 billion since the establishment of our institution. And mostly, we have worked in Africa, but in over 125 countries. Most recently, even we have expanded some of our operations in Africa, but also in Latin America. Through the grant technical assistance program, we typically focus on capacity building, and now increasingly also on project preparation. And we have observed over the years, and this is based on my experience, let's say, working for a public sector department has been very useful, but I've observed that in many other contexts is that indeed, I mean, the success of any investment in the water and sanitation sector, in any sector, in fact, if you want to achieve a sustainable, meaningful impact, I mean, the main stakeholders need to be need to have the right capacities, right? And when we talk about water sector, water utilities are a key player. And we observe that very often when they don't have the right technical, managerial, and financial capacities, but of course this is impacting on the performance, and this is impacting on the performance of the projects, the infrastructure projects that we're funding. So we have somehow we have some kind of vested interest in supporting water operators. You know, we want them to be able to deliver. Yeah, and we understand that in many countries, no water operators, they not only provide a service, but they also have to ensure that the water resource is of good quality, is protected, and they're also taking on new responsibilities, right? You know, recently we had a partnership with International Water Association on water safety plans. You know how water operators have also to develop water safety plans and include climate resilience in the way they work. Yeah, so there are multiple. They are taking new responsibilities, and I mean, they're already struggling to meet the largely unmet needs in water and sanitation. I don't want to generalize, but of course, there are many countries where we know that. I mean, in Africa, for instance, with the current pace of urbanization, you know, just meeting the existing needs in water and sanitation is a challenge. So with the growing urban population, is placing additional strains, and it's an additional challenge for water operators. So yes, so in short, how capacity development could and WOPs in particular could support utilities. Um, to be very honest, I mean, through our cooperation, we have observed indeed that some of the results that have just been highlighted by our colleague from the Asian Development Bank. This is clear that you have a reduction in non-revenue water, that you have indeed improvement in operational efficiencies and asset management. This is obvious, but I would say some of the impacts that you really want to see, probably you need to observe them over a longer period of time, right? I mean, the WOPs that we have supported initially had a duration of 1 year, then we extended that. WOPA recommended to extend that to 2 years. um, I mean, over 2 years you can observe a lot of things, but I mean, the real impact, it has to be observed probably over a longer time frame. So this is really one of the observations I would like to make. But nevertheless, we recognize the importance of the key role of WORPs again, and they need to be capacitated as much as any other stakeholder in the water and sanitation sector. I think the ADB colleague spoke now about the regulators, and we know that in a number of countries you have also water user associations. You have a number of other players. No, we want also to bring in the private sector into also either entering into provision of safe drinking water, or managing water infrastructure, investing in water infrastructure as well. So all these stakeholders have to be involved. And I think one of the features of the WOPs that we found would certainly contribute to the sustainability of the work of the WOPs is this the ownership that has been built over the years, through these participatory processes. I mean, water operators, because of the increased responsibilities that are placed on them. Yeah, so they need to be capacitated, but they need also to be able be involved also in the planning, yeah, of investment projects, infrastructure investment projects in the water and sanitation sector. The voice needs to be heard, and they not just be seen. They should not just be seen as implementers, right? Or just be held accountable for the services that they are providing. If they are not, they don't have a say in the way the projects are designed and in the way even the investment are planned, right? So I would say these are some among some of the points that we have observed and we have noticed and we on which we would like to also focus going forward. I have to say that the second round of WOPs that the OPEC fund has supported in 2018 was more linked to indeed pipeline development, and we had this in mind. Yeah, we say okay, we want to support WOPs. We want to, but subsequently we want to also support what is next, implementing this medium-term performance improvement plans, right? And I think this is really for organizations like ours, and I believe other MDBs. There is also this aspect that is very important. Yeah, you cannot just do WOPs as standalone projects without really linking that to the broader picture. Yeah, to okay, this water utility needs to expand. Why? Because they need to provide services to more people in different areas of the urban area concerned. So the WOPs will be has to the scope of the WOPs has to be adjusted, has to be designed, yeah, in a way that this will factor in, you know, these planned additional investments and services that need to be provided in a particular setting, right? And of course, if the utility later on is expected to manage a larger infrastructure, water sanitation infrastructure, so obviously a good diagnostic during the inception of the work of their capacities will also help perhaps include in the subsequent investment projects some element of capacity building, technical assistance to make sure that the investment deliver the expected results. I think I will pause here for the time being and perhaps take some questions.
Super,
Thanks.
super. Thank you very much, Dr. Walid. So I will continue with, thank you very much. I would like to continue with Mr. Arnaud, no, de Bansay. As we all know, no, the European Union is also supporting, no, the WOP practice, especially with this, with the latest EU WOP program, and previously, no, also with the ACP EU water facility, several WOPs has been financing. In your perspective, the same, right? What is the linkage? How WOPs can actually support water utilities financial management and the investment capacity, and maybe you would also like to elaborate on the second question about if, no, it's necessary and what to take into account if we want to better integrate, to better link WOPs activities and the investment that happens always at the same time, right?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here today. As you know, I mean, the European Union is a very long, I mean, we have been supporting WOPs, water operator partnership, for at least 15 years now. So it's a long-term support that we are providing to these water operators partnerships. And it continues with this EU WOP program. And we are now planning to extend this support. And we are preparing a next phase that we should launch in 2024. But one question that we ask ourselves is exactly the question we are asked today. So should we more systematically link our water operators partnership with investments or not? So let's take one step back. When we are working on the water sector at the level of the European Union, we try to look at this governance, skills, and financing continuum. So we really believe that this is key. So on one side, You know that the government need to put in place the adequate regulatory framework. Okay, that's, we know the governance. On the other side, we have the financing and donors that need to diversify and better tailor their financing offers for the sector. And financing offer, private financing offers, public financing offers, with climate finance in the form of grants, subvention, bonds, equity, quasi-equity, loans, etc., any type of financing. And then in the middle, you have the skills. And in the water sector, the skills are in the hands of the water operators. So the water operators are those that are the cornerstone of this continuum between governance, skills, and financing. And they are the ones that can elaborate a well-established, well-structured. There need to be a demand for financing, okay? And a demand for governance. And the WOPs are the ones that can bring on the table what is needed in terms of governance and what is needed in terms of financing. But for that, you need to have a well and explicit, established, structured, understandable, trustworthy, transparent, and credible demand. And that's quite a lot, huh? And for that, you need to develop the capacities of the water operators and the utilities to develop this adequate demand. And this is extremely important. We have made an evaluation of our first programs of water operators partnership, the one developed under the water facilities. Some of you may remember this first program. And what we have seen is that the water operators partnerships tended to be more successful when water network infrastructure was either not in need of complete overall investment, so meaning that if the infrastructure was completely collapsing, then the water operators were not really working. But it was clear that the projects tended to be more successful when there was an ongoing infrastructure project underway, or at least a prospect for future investments. Okay. On the other side, it also, why? Because it allowed direct on-the-job coaching related to the investment, the ongoing investment or the prospect of the investment, and progressing, and also it allowed to have direct implementation of the learning that were made, that were transferred. And that is extremely important, because when you learn, you have to apply directly your knowledge. And this is sometimes a big problem of capacity development programs that are completely unrooted from current ongoing activities. So, but the downside of this is that in certain number of programs, the investments are not progressing correctly. And the calendars and the assumptions related to the calendars of investments are not well done, meaning that at the end, the water operators partnership and the coaching is not aligned with the calendar of the investment, and so it fails on the ground. I'm sure you all know this much better than me. But this is what we have seen in our evaluation. And then the recent, I don't know if you have seen, but EIB has released an evaluation of its water operations a few weeks ago. And this evaluation is extremely interesting because it's showing how far the bank is not enough looking at operation and maintenance of its investments and how far it is impacting on the sustainability of the investment. And this is where the water operator partnerships are coming back again. And this is a message that we got from a number of European development finance institutions. Yes, we want to much more work with water operators partnerships to support the investment that we are doing. So considering these different things, we really believe that the support to the water partnership can be transformative in terms of how the sustainability of the investments are made. And as we are investing more and more in the sector, and we will have to invest more in the sector, this is being more and more important to ensure the sustainability of these investments. Of course, and we've been talking about this for years and years, and how we are going to do that more concretely. So there are two things that we are going to do. First, we are going to support this urban water catalyst initiative. I'm sure, Dieter, you are going to talk about it, but we want to provide for the turnaround of the utilities to accompany the utilities up to an investment. So from where they are up to a capacity to manage and to follow an investment on the long term. So maybe, I think, Dieter, you will talk a bit about that. So we are going to provide up to 112 million euros of guarantees for that. And then we want to follow up with a new phase of the Water Operators Partnership. And in this new phase, we want to really think with you how we can link that better with the investments that we are doing in the sector and with the work on the governance we are doing in the sector, to build really this continuum, because we really believe that this is what we need to move forward more sustainably. Thank you very much.
Super. Thank you very much, Arnaud. Thank you very much for your intervention. And now the turn is for our GIZ colleague, Dieter. The GIZ is a key partner of the water utilities in Germany to support WOPs, because as we know, in Germany you don't have this legislative support that allows utilities to directly spend on this, and so I understand that GIZ is a key partner in organizing these WOPs. And also related to the water facility, I think the questions are very much focused on this triple UCI, and could you please elaborate on this?
Okay, yes. Thank you very much, and good morning. I'm very happy to be here. I have to say I'm always a bit astonished when I'm being introduced by a moderator with 25 years of experience in the water sector, because then you realize how old you have grown in the last decades. And I've got some colleagues here who I worked with in Jordan who can actually also testify that it's true. I really grew old. But on the other hand, that also helps to look at the topic at hand today from various perspectives, because actually I started my career 25 years ago in a German water utility. And at that time, there were no WOPs around, or was maybe the thinking was, but there were no WOPs as WOPs. So we did some technical advisory services for the German institutions to work with utilities in partner countries as a utility. So it was maybe like a front runner of a WOP, if you want. Not to the same extent. So that's one thing where I think, yes, WOPs can help and are an important instrument to help moving utilities towards sustainability, but there's more to it, and I come to that in a second. I then worked in various countries, including in Jordan, and with utilities. And one thing which came very clearly to my mind was really, we have to not only work on technical level, start to reduce water losses and all these kind of things, but actually it's more about introducing a different mindset. And one element we did in Jordan, for example, was introducing, although there were not companies, but we introduced a so-called profit and loss statement, so that basically the managers who were not commercial managers, but got a feeling about, okay, how well is my utility doing when I really look at what are we spending money and how much income do we generate, and where are the levers to basically change these obviously quite often negative situation. So I'm deeply convinced that technical support is needed. However, it is something which needs to be reflected when it comes to financial management, when it comes to the financial numbers, because in the end, it's not only about linking WOPs to investment, it's linking WOPs to a process, to a mental, as I said, a mindset towards becoming a financially well-managed utility, because then investments later on will be, if you want, relatively easy in terms of that the people can then also manage the investments. And I thank you very much, Walid, also for your statement. And I think, Arnaud, you said it as well. It's not only about investment planning, so that we know, okay, what kind of pipeline do we have and what investments are needed. But it is then about maintenance cost, operation cost, and to get that people get that feeling that we have to actually be very serious when we do our budgets to budget also maintenance cost, because we have seen far too many, investments which have been in the short term successful, but then because of lack of maintenance, lack of operational attentions, and so on, after a few years they failed, and then they have been basically rehabilitated, repaid again, and so on. And this is a vicious circle. And in order to break this, WOPs can be an element, and I think in one of your slides, WOPs as an alternative to technical assistance. Now, maybe not only because I'm GIZ doing a lot of technical assistance, but in general, I would say WOPs are an instrument which are part of a technical assistance approach and which need to be embedded in a much longer term process for utilities to become financially sustainable and technically, and that means operational performance-wise, viable. And now I'm coming to what Arnaud has already introduced a little bit, the Urban Water Catalyst Initiative, or the WCI, because the idea of that initiative is actually what we are talking today about. It's really, we have various, and I say that also with some self-criticism for German cooperation, we have various instruments. We've got the technical assistance, one of them is then the WOPs. We've got the financial assistance, which then comes in with guarantees, loans, and so on. But quite often they are being done very much in isolation. So quite often, of course, there is a plan that it should go hand in hand, but reality shows then that quite often the technical assistance is running ahead and moving, and then once the financial assistance comes in, you know, maybe the system has already fallen a little bit behind what they should have achieved. So the idea of that WCI is actually to combine these different instruments to a one powerful, strong process. And this is, again, I think a WOP, and I think there was a question about can we extend WOPs that also they should do more when it comes to investments and so on. Well, the question is, how large do you want to extend these WOPs? Because a WOP, as we said, is a not-for-profit instrument. So how long can a utility then be involved in supporting another utility for not-for-profit? Can a WOP run for 10 years? I actually doubt, because having worked in a German water utility, I know how scarce technical and financial resources in utilities are. So therefore, this Urban Water Catalyst Initiative tries to combine this starting point of technical assistance, but, and that is very important, changing a mindset. We start working on the top level, because technical assistance, really in terms of technical issues, quite often are more on operational level. And this is important, but to really have a turnaround with utilities, you have to start really on the top. You have to start with the managers, because they're the mindset, and the owners even, the mindset change needs to happen. And so this initiative tries to start on that top level with the managers, the CEOs, the owners, to come into a reform process with a 100 days program that we actually quickly see, is there a reform-mindedness, if you want. And then instruments like the Water Operator Partnership can be used to tackle the issues which have been identified in this 100 days program as the key topics for that utility to become financially and technically viable in the long term, to tackle these issues with peers from German, French, other South-South partnerships. All these utility partnerships can then happen, but basically based on already a starting mindset process. And then this is key. It's not, okay, we do this and this is then done and then let's hope that things get better. No, the point is that part of that process is then to develop really an investment plan, develop a business plan, which is then being used for the investments to come. These start with small-scale investments, mostly on grant base, and then there are larger investments which can come in where, and Arnaud mentioned that, for example, guarantees can play a major role, because at that point, some utilities should already be in a stage to be able to access capital markets and their local capital markets where then guarantees are needed. Or there are, of course, also possibilities for loans from KfW or from others to basically then bring in the to finance the investment pipeline. But then you finance a pipeline built on a very strong and turnaround utility, which can actually manage both the investment process, but then also the operation process of the infrastructure. I think this is key. I think WOPs are an important element as part of a long-term process, which has to start on management level and not so much on technical level, where we quite often, maybe at least some of the WOPs I have seen, have worked a lot on technical level, but not so much on management level, and that's definitely a shortcoming.
Super. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so last but not least, Barbara, sometimes the ability of utilities in developing countries to actually to steer investments or even to receive the money the funding is actually limited because we have tried to prevent corruption, right? And therefore, we as a network championing integrity and good practices in the water sector. What is your reflection about the topic, right? But tailor-made to your organization. How does capacity development around integrity actually support utilities financial management, sustainability, and investment capacity? And if you also want to elaborate a bit on if we should be pushing for more integration with the investments and investment cycles, the floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Carlos, and thanks for this opportunity to talk about this. I think I'm the only person sitting on this panel who's not directly involved in WOPs. Having said that, I think there is a real opportunity, certainly for the kind of work that we do as the Water Integrity Network, to be integrated into the WOP approach. And so we are mandated to work on improving integrity in the water and sanitation sector globally, which is no small challenge. And I think when we talk about integrity, if we look at the flip side of it, a big part of that is actually trying to really manage and find ways of reducing the risks of corruption, of fraud, of malfeasance. And I do need to say at this point that corruption is not a factor of any particular geography or any particular institution. Corruption is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's an ongoing and evolving process. And the battle against corruption, we have to be innovative. We have to keep changing how we actually control it, because it's never going to go away. And the moment we lose sight of it, it will actually find the gaps, and they will find the gaps and come in. The challenge is that the water sector is particularly vulnerable to corruption, and it's vulnerable for a couple of reasons. The one is that the water sector is a very infrastructure-dependent sector, and globally the infrastructure sector is known to be extremely vulnerable to corruption. The second is that in many cases the water sector has fragmented institutional arrangements. And where you get fragmented institutional arrangements with overlapping mandates, gaps in mandates, etc., it becomes very difficult to actually hold institutions clearly accountable, because it's not clear who's actually doing what, etc. So the fragmentation of governance structures in the water sector is a problem. And then the third challenge is that quite often what we're talking about in terms of utilities is state-owned enterprises. Which are, again, it's a sector that is known to be vulnerable to corruption globally, partly because it's close to government, close to government budgets. Generally, quite often governance is not of the best, and so the water sector is extremely vulnerable to corruption. And it has an incredibly high cost. You know, the challenge with corruption is that the benefits go to a very small group of people, and the costs are borne by society, by the environment, and in this case very much by the utilities, where the costs of providing services go up, the quality of services goes down, the operation and maintenance costs, if we can come back to operation and maintenance costs, very often goes up because of substandard services that have been provided. And so it's not just a once-off, it's an ongoing cost to the utility. And part of the cost is in reputational cost. And I think that when one's talking about financing, that reputational cost is what is very important. So, and I think going back, Carlos, to one of your slides from where you summarized the previous discussion, you talked about, the slide talked about governance issues being a major criteria for rating agencies. And what we are seeing from senior people in DFIs and financing institutions is that poor governance, lack of transparency and accountability is a real problem, particularly for non-sovereign loans to utilities, where there isn't a government guarantee. They actually need to be clear that there is a level of integrity. Poor integrity in utilities is keeping them out of the running of being able to obtain financing. So I think that there's a real need to build the capacity of water operators around integrity. And again, I think as has been referenced, there's a lot of focus in the WOPs around technical issues. And yes, there needs to be. Absolutely. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, but I do think that it's critical that there is equally a focus on the governance issues and the integrity issues. And integrity cuts across governance, finance, operation, human resources, the whole lot. So there needs to be a focus on the integrity issues, and there are tools to actually deal with it. And I'm not sure, I think I'm about to I think I've run out of time. I see red letters being flashed at me. But I mean, I think, and if there's time, I can talk further about the work that WIN has been doing through a tool called InWash, which is specifically designed to actually work with utilities to improve their integrity practices. And just to say that I really think there's an opportunity for WOPs in this regard.
Okay, super. Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you for your intervention. So I have two more questions for the panel, but of course, looking at the time, no, we will not have the opportunity to everyone to contribute to address these questions. But you know that also yesterday I was attending the presentation of IBNet, and they mentioned that there is a demand for including more climate aspects in the IBNet assessment. I know that in the aqua rating of the ADB, the same, they are working also like specific assessments of climate, because we are all embarking this sustainability journey, climate journey. So we are all asked about what your program is doing to support the Paris Agreement, right? Decarbonization, climate adaptation, etc. So, do you see how might WOPs help make water investments more green, participatory, and more inclusive? Do you see any room for WOPs in these areas? Who would like to elaborate? Also, our online colleagues, I don't know. Dieter, will you like to start with?
Yes, thank you, Carlos, for the question. Well, obviously, there's a lot of room for WOPs to embark on this. We have already heard, I think, from the colleague from the ADB, also from Walid, basically a lot of WOPs actually deal with the topic of energy efficiency and dealing with how can you actually bring down, from the cost side, energy costs, but that means most often you talk about reduced electricity consumption, reduced energy consumption, which helps, of course, on the one hand, save costs, but also on the other hand, if you want, classifies as a green investment for that. But I think that's a natural fit, if you want, to a certain extent. The question is, can we go beyond that? And there, I would say, again, the WOPs concept is a great concept, but do not overstretch it. I think that WOPs actually can have a lot of technical support for, as I said, these kind of typical technical things, energy efficiency, maybe investments in solar, maybe also reuse of or regaining energy from wastewater treatment plants and these kind of things. But all these are, if you want, to a certain extent, at least technically speaking, low-hanging fruits in terms of, they are there. It's not rocket science. It's maybe you need to combine again TA and FA, so financial assistance, to do that. The question is rather, if we really talk about greening investments and that whole sustainability agenda, I would say, for me, important is that the WOPs can help utilities to become this kind of climate resilient by reducing their energy consumption. Maybe even there are examples around the world of energy neutral utilities to go down that route. But also we have to be clear, and this is where I come back to the enabling environment I said also for the mindset of managers. What is the environment around that? So for example, how are the energy costs, the energy tariffs structured in the countries? Are there subsidies that, for example, utilities don't need to pay? Or is there a kind of trade saying, okay, you don't need to pay the electricity cost in full, but on the other hand, the government doesn't need to pay for the water tariffs. With all these kind of structures which we see all over the world, then obviously, a WOP tackling the investments and the support for green energy efficiency approaches is more difficult, because basically, if you have transparency in all that, then automatically there is a big investment incentive in these kind of things, and then WOPs can play a major role. To which extent WOPs can play a role in changing the enabling environment, that's a difficult question. I would say that's more difficult. And this is where I said at the beginning, this is why WOPs need to be integrated in a longer process, because this is where long-term TA comes in. And players like, of course, also the WIN network come in.
So thank you very much, Dieter. I will skip the last question because I believe there are some interest on this topic. So maybe someone else wants to elaborate, and we will skip the last question, and maybe we can open for a couple of questions from the audience later. Barbara, you will.
Just very briefly, I think that there is quite a lot of finance coming into the water sector for adaptation, not just the mitigation side of things. And I do think that there needs to be, I mean, somebody was talking about the project preparation, for example. There needs to be a real consideration of climate change in the planning for new services, for refurbishment, etc., because there really are substantial challenges coming as a result of the climate change that we're seeing. But there is a new source of financing that is available through the adaptation funds, and hopefully it's actually going to increase.
Super, thank you. Anyone joining virtually would like to elaborate on this topic about green and sustainable finance and the role of WOPs?
I'll maybe jump in quickly. It's a really, really good question, and I think it links, very much. I really agree with the comment made by other panelists about linking the investment with the WOPs, and the same goes with investment in climate investment. I mean, from ADB's side, we've made a commitment to mobilize 100 billion in climate finance by 2030, bank-wide. And of course, the water sector will be a key part of that because we know that climate change is primarily felt through water. So we always try and link our WOPs to our investments, like many others. And we've, to date, leveraged about $1.1 billion in ADB finance investments linked to the water entities which have benefited from WOPs to make that link. And now we're very much now looking much more at climate financing resilience. We've just been working with 6 utilities to develop decarbonization and resilience roadmaps. So how will they fundamentally build their resilience, shift their operations to try and achieve net zero while improving service levels? And I think that's a key part of then, if we come in with the financing, helping to maximize those opportunities for climate finance. So really, I think that the WOPs provides a good entry point for doing that and bringing in, hopefully leveraging in the climate finance, not just from ADB side, but tapping funds like from the Green Climate Fund and others. Thank you.
Thank you. Arnold, very briefly to give the opportunity also.
Very, very briefly, just a short message perhaps to all the water operators that are here. It's a golden opportunity. So just to say that we are seeing a shift in the financing. We are moving from a world of mitigation towards a world of adaptation. And as we see this move, we need to understand, the people need to understand that the key players are the water operators. You need to change the image you have there, because this will trigger a great interest for what you are doing. And I think this is very important that all the water operators community just begins to say everywhere, we are the adaptation world, we are the future of climate change financing, etc., etc. And this will change the image of the sector. And I think it will really bring in a lot of attention and some more potential, even from impact fundings, big banks, but not only development finance, foundations, public everybody. So I really plead that we go in this direction because this will very much help the sector, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't know if Dr. Walid, would you like, I know that you have to leave sharp, so maybe you want to also saying goodbye to everyone.
Thanks very much. In fact, I just wanted to also mention that as part of our climate action plan that we launched last year at COP27, we're also placing more emphasis on building climate resilient infrastructures, including in the water sanitation sector, and as well as looking at the climate impact assessments, undertaking climate impact assessments as part of our due diligence process for investment projects. So here also, when we will in projects in the water sanitation sector that we have in the pipeline, we're very much looking into that, we welcome the integrating these aspects into future WOPs and linking it to technical assistance as well as WOPs, as was rightly said by our colleague from GIZ. Yeah, WOPs are not for profit, and we need to incentivize water utilities to systematically institutionalize these practices. Right. Thank you very much, and wish you a successful event. And yes, I have to leave in about 2-3 minutes, but I'm
Yes.
still here for a few minutes. Thank
Yes, thank you. And maybe in those 2-3 minutes, we can take on a couple of questions from the audience. Maybe Monica, yes.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add in regard to the question around climate finance. What are we actually looking at here? Here we're looking on the mitigation side at things that have to do with energy efficiency. That's kind of obvious. Many people realize, but not all realize, that in many cities of this world, the water utility is the single largest energy user. Buenos Aires, for example. But something that has only recently come to our attention in the water team in the World Bank is the very significant emission reduction potential on the methane side. In fact, the methane emissions in Kampala, where we've seen research from Leeds University, are larger than the entire mobility sector in the country, just the methane piece. And here is a wonderful opportunity, water operators, because this is largely an experimental learning from everybody who is doing something, kind of activity before one even can look at packaging a financing piece. So I just wanted to put that out here. Yes, it's one thing to talk about dollar numbers, but the interesting thing, and I think Alison has pointed that out, is the period beforehand, before you package it, but when you actually look at what is out there in terms of technologies, but what is also out there in terms of emissions.
Thank you for your contribution, Monica. Simon, do you want to also contribute?
Yes, I first want to congratulate GWOPA for this accelerating moment of relevant opportunities and discussions we have here, because we are touching very critical moments now. I hear so much wisdom already before I had the first cup of coffee this morning that I can hardly stop talking. The thing what I want to say, first of all, I noticed that the responsibility for good operations in water utilities is not in nobody's hands except for the managers of the utilities themselves. So the responsibility is at the place where it is the local utility has to be self-purifying its operational and its managerial capacity. The water operator partnerships are very critical, but I agree with Walter, they should not be overstretched. We can, as mentees, and I'm working with VEI, a Dutch consortium of Dutch water operators, to support utilities overseas. We can do a lot in the operational regime. We can do also a lot in the change of the managerial mindset. Although I must say that if you want to change, the change has to come from inside and not imposed upon from outside. I always use the metaphor that if you take an egg, the shell of the egg has to be broken from inside if it wants to bring new life. If you open it from outside by consulting forces put upon a managerial position, it will just break the egg and it will kill life. So that's the unique feature of a WOP. But now the most important triggering issue for me these 3 days, we are here living in the bubble of WOPs. We all believers of WOPs. But there is also a non-believer part in the world. And we have not to overstretch the capacity of WOPs, but there is one thing we need. We need access to investments. We have an urban catalyst fund, which is highly appreciated, to support minor operational investments in WOPs, to improve the operational efficiency. But now the last step is to get access to the huge financing challenges for the future, with replacement of infrastructure, with extension of infrastructure, and that needs more liaison with the major international financing institutions. And I know that they do not realize WOPs as a carrying vehicle for their investment programs. Let's be honest. That means that we have to find a way to get closer to each other. We come closer to each other, but we need to make steps. If there is, as Harald Schussel from the EIB yesterday said there is plenty of money available for investments, but it needs solid plans from utilities, long-term plans, consistent plans, and not haphazard, where is the money, so we go this way or we go that way. No, consistent plans. We also need a vehicle that if a WOP is not carrying major investment programs, because the IFIs do not trust the WOPs to be able to do that, we need a third party to join in. And I'm looking for that brokering mechanism to find a modality that WOPs and investment components come together in a way that they make the change for the future. Rather than that we now all of a sudden try to get access to climate funds, then we make the same mistakes. The WOPs have a unique feature. They are peer-to-peer, they speak the language of the operators, they are not for profit. That's all unique, that's good, but it is not enough to get access to the international financing opportunities. So we need to find out how we can compromise this gap and find a way to connect. Stop.
No, thank you very much, Simon. So looking at the time, I don't know if we have time for one more question. Yes, if it can be directed to our panelists, it will be better appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'll direct it to the panelists then. And I want to touch on the role, what they think about the role of tax financing through national budgets, because you also have the context where this is declining. For example, you look at my country and in the provision for the 2023 budget, 90% of the allocation is expected from donors. And with that state of affairs, I don't know what the utility or the operators or the operator will do if those funds should not come in. So just want to know what they think about the role of tax resources.
Anyone?
So if I got
Maybe
your question. Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in. Yeah, I think in terms of that we talk about the 3 T's, taxes, tariffs, and transfers being a key part of the equation for financing water supply. So I think of that, taxes are absolutely critical. We see in terms of ensuring financial sustainability of utilities, of water supply and sanitation service operations, a combination is usually needed. Often we see taxes funding capital investments, could be local property taxes, often national cost sharing we see in many countries where federal tax dollars will help finance capital expenditures. And then we see the tariffs, which are critical for supporting operations and maintenance particularly, and then other transfers and concessional financing from IFIs such as ADB. So I think you need the 3 T's, and yeah, taxes are a critical part of that. So that revenue mobilization base is a really important one.
Okay, so, please.
Can I just add something to that? And it's not something, I'll be very brief, and it's not something that I'm expecting WOPs to solve, but we do need to understand the global context that we're operating in. Last year, $89 billion left Africa in illicit financial flows, partly related to tax issues. And there's a greater scheme of things that is making it very difficult for governments in developing countries to actually fund the water services.
Exactly. So, looking at the time, I only have to thank you very much for being here, for your participation, and please a big applause to our panelists for the contribution. And thank you for supporting the WOP practice. Bye-bye.